What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the new series that is the NamaSLAY podcast meets Barun Garain in the 7 Essentials to Transform Your Life. I'm so excited to be back. And of course, I have the fabulous Barun Garain in the house. How you doing, Barun?
Oh, it's fantastic. It's been really amazing last few days.
Yeah. Have you been enjoying the series so far? I'm really having a lot of fun. I love breaking down all the different chapters in your book. I think it's been awesome so far.
Interesting. I'm actually reading the own book, actually, going through them just to make sure that I don't forget something. Yes,
You got to
which is,
refresh that memory.
yeah, it's amazing. Actually, some of the references I'm actually more interested in. I'm going back to them, and there are some YouTube videos there. It's fantastic, so I can sort of refurbish and sort of recap some of the things that I had captured maybe 5, 10 years ago. So now it's all updated. So it's fantastic.
Wow. Is that when you started writing this book? Like 5, 10 years ago?
Yeah, 5 years ago, yes, more than 5 years ago, actually. See, I said this is
Wow.
supposed to be my notes for my own, for my own self, and it turned out to be a book eventually. So I've been collecting some of these information for a long period of time, Melissa.
Whoa, that's awesome. That
Yeah.
is so cool. I mean, and it also goes to show that people think, you are supposed to have all these deadlines, and sometimes things take 5 years to get to where you're at. So I think it's great that you shared that with us, because I think there's probably going to be someone watching going, wow, that has taken him a while to get to here. Mind you, you did publish it 2+ years ago, but still, like, it still took you a while to get to this final result and be where you are right now, right? So,
Yeah, exactly. In fact, it took me a long time for my own experimentation. I've been trying them on my own,
right.
and it took a long time, to really understand, right kind of water to drink, how to breathe, those kind of stuff. Go out and also meet with like-minded individuals, people, whom I can go and interact with. So it's a long journey.
For sure, especially because the coolest thing, like you just said, is that you kind of used yourself as an experiment to
Yes.
experiment on all of these different ideas, which makes this, little series that we started even more fun, because you can also express your like just your thoughts on what happened when you experimented with these ideas. So it's very cool.
Yes.
All right. Well, before we jump right into it, I'll get you to do a little bit of a recap like you did last time, because that was awesome, of the previous episode. And then we'll just jump right into this one. We're going to be talking about absorbing cosmic energy.
Yes, Melissa. So, see, let me just go back to what is 7i. 7i is all about real connections that actually matter for a happier, healthier, and a vibrant living. So, I'm talking about real connections here. See, we have friends and families, and we have money, deal with money and career and all kinds of stuff. They may or may not be with us forever. But this 7 essentials, I call them 7i, are going to be with us until our last breath. So that's the beauty about these 7 essentials, that they are integral part of yourself. So that's the fundamental of 7i. So we started with breathing life, which is all about deep breathing, and we practiced one or two techniques just to make sure that we have deep breathing as part of our daily living. And we also highlighted the importance of going back into the nature. Spend as much time as possible in the nature or any green space close by. So that's number one, breathing life. Number two is optimum hydration, which means that we are body, just to make sure that we look after our own our own self, because we are two-third water. So it's very, very important that we understand what is the best way to optimize our hydration. So this is where number two essential is quite critical. And we talked about the best kind of water to drink, and what to do if you don't have the right kind of spring water, what kind of filtration do you do, how to structure the water, what's the importance of salt, for example, potassium, to make sure that we are hydrated. So we talked about that. So today we'll talk about the number three essential, which is absorbing cosmic energy. So, so there we are. So we talk about cosmic energy today.
Okay, awesome. I'm so excited. And I also wanted to give you a little bit of feedback on um when we did the last episode, we talked about me experimenting on myself and drinking the lemon and the salt in the morning for ultimate hydration. Sorry, I should say putting lemon and salt into my water and drinking a liter of it for ultimate hydration. And I was wondering if it's possible to have maybe too much salt and it making you feel nauseous, because I had a little bit of that experience and I wasn't sure if it was maybe the lemon or if it was the salt. So did you ever have that experience when you did it?
Yes. So
Okay.
interesting thing is, if you see, there is a way of cleansing with saturated salt. Essentially, what salt will do is will try to detox the bad salt that you have in your system. For example, you may have all
Mm.
kinds of salt which are toxic, and what the new salt will do will try to replace them, and that could lead to some kind of detoxification, and it has happened with me as well, because before I never had sea salt or Himalayan salt. I used to have the
Table.
processed salt, the
Mm.
refined salt, and those salt are part of my body, were part of my body. So when I started to have a good quality salt, it starts to replace them. So that's what detoxification. So that
Mm.
replacement happens, and that process might be a little bit, it might take a couple of days, sometimes weeks, depending on what you have in your system. So it can happen. So there could be some detoxing
Okay.
effect. Drinking water by itself could actually lead to all kinds of stuff, because things wants to flush out. The body wants to flush out stuff, and once you start drinking lots of water, and lemon is actually, it actually, what do you call it, neutralizes many calcium buildup and all kinds of stuff. So those things have to come out, you
Right.
know so yes, you can have some kind of a detox symptom to start with, but it
Okay.
should go away slowly.
Okay, that's what I assumed. And actually, I was telling my friend about what I was doing, and she's like, "Oh, it sounds like you're detoxing." I went, "You know what? I bet I am, because I'm
Yeah.
feeling super nauseous. So I bet that there's just stuff coming up." So,
Mm, mm.
ooh, very interesting. Okay, I just wanted to first ask you that. I'm going to continue to do it and log my progress. And maybe next week, maybe it'll be 2 weeks. So I'll let you know how I'm doing after that.
Absolutely, yes.
All right, so getting to absorbing cosmic energy, my favorite chapter in your book, honestly. And it might be because I'm a little bit biased because I love everything to do with spirituality, and of course I love Reiki, and you touch on these different ideas whatnot in this chapter. And so why don't you first just kind of give us your run through on what the chapter is all about for someone just stumbling upon this series?
Yes, absorbing cosmic energy is all about connecting with the natural energy that actually makes life possible in the first place.
Hmm.
The number one is sun's energy, because sun is actually fundamental to all life. Without sun's energy, there's no life on this
Mhm.
planet. Full stop. So
Mhm.
that's how powerful sun is.
Right.
So it's very important to make sure that we absorb that energy on a regular basis. So that's number one. Number two, just to make sure that the sound vibrations, for example, the sound vibrations that we have around us are pleasant
Hmm.
and natural as much as possible. Like in the house, I mean, it's amazing. In any house nowadays, you have the fridge running, you have this electronics running, you have this running, that running. All these unnatural sounds are actually not very good.
Hmm.
So it's very important to connect with natural sounds. And in fact, if you look into the Old Testament and Bible and stuff like that, they say that the whole origin of the earth is actually, or the humanity, the sound comes first. So the sound has, yeah, the sound,
Really?
yeah,
you
sound
you had
comes
me
first.
stumped there. I've never heard that. That is so interesting. Whoa.
Yeah, the sound is from everything else emanates. Even though you can debate about that, but the idea is that sound has a very important role in our day-to-day living.
Hmm.
For example, if you live close to a place where you get all kinds of noises and unpleasant sounds, you know, then it's actually, you won't feel good. So
Yeah,
sound actually
totally.
has a very important role to play. It actually even though I haven't seen a lot of research on what actually happens chemically inside the body, but it doesn't make you feel good for sure. The sound vibration is very important. That's why going to the nature is so important. Hear the noises of the birds, the plants, the trees, and the wind, the waves. So they are beautiful. I think those sounds are very energizing in a way, and it can revive you
Absolutely.
in a big way.
Absolutely. Waves always, like the ocean has always revived me and made me feel, I don't know, just
Yeah.
it's therapeutic, made me feel energized. That's the
Yeah.
perfect word to describe it, I would say. You're right.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes I go to the Ontario Lake here, and last night, actually, I go morning and evening. Last night it was very windy, and the waves were mind-boggling, and the Canadian geese are everywhere, making their own noises and sounds, and the big waves. If you just close your eyes, listen to those waves, it's just mind-boggling. It's just beautiful, and you come home really refreshed.
Totally.
It is. So sound energy is very important. And the number three is more into Earth's energy, because we are part of this Earth. Whatever we have, our body is actually made from the Earth. The food that we eat, it's all interconnected, right? So so to really get into Earth's energy, which is like 7 to 8 hertz, whereas nowadays we are bombarded with all kinds of frequencies, gigahertz, which is like billion times more than what Earth's frequency is, billion times. So I think to really connect with the Earth, the energy that comes from the Earth, which is mainly negative, electrons, and it can help to really neutralize some of the toxins that we build up as at charges, positive charges in our system. So Earth's energy is really important. Make sure that we have enough exposure to the Earth's elements. And then comes I say sun gazing, or looking at the suns. Get some sun's energy inside your body, and there are different techniques for that, which I talked about in my book. And it's very important that at this day and age we have to minimize the EMF, or the radiation that is coming out from the electronics and from the wireless and the Wi-Fi and all kinds of stuff. So idea is to not avoid, you can't avoid it anyway, it's there. Idea is to minimize as much as possible. And then you mentioned about energy healing. It's so important. Reiki and all kinds of energy healing techniques are there. It helps to balance yourself. And then I talk about the tachyon energy. It's really a tool which could be utilized to neutralize some of the ill effects of the radiations that goes around. So I talked about the 7 different aspects where we could leverage them to make sure that we absorb the right kind of cosmic energy in our body. So I stop there. Just briefly, that's what this chapter is all about.
Yeah, it was such a good chapter. And man, like, I just kind of want to show everyone I have so many like post-it notes and highlighted sections. I'm gonna read a couple of them for you, for everyone. Do you mind, Brune? Can I read a couple things?
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah,
Please
and then
do.
we can just kind of touch on them.
Yes.
So, a quote that you have in your book from James Oshman: sunspots and the cycles of the moon can cause changes in ionospheric currents and geophysical fields, which in turn influence the fields within us. And so a lot of people discuss, for example, the way that the moon is, when the moon is a specific way, and how the moon affects the tides and the currents in the ocean. And we should, be aware of the fact that we're 75+% water, maybe 80% water. Of course we're going to be affected as well. If it can affect the tides and the water in the ocean, it can obviously affect us as well. And so just thinking of how the moon and the sun, and there's so much evidence that it completely does affect us, but I think people don't necessarily look too far into it anymore, which is interesting. It could be because we're so distracted by social media, and we're kind of, I don't know, our interests have changed a little bit, but I think everything that Barun teaches is what we need to be reflecting on, and how these things could be possibly affecting us. There was something else that I read that I thought was so interesting. So many things, I mean. um Dr. Mercola, in his book Effortless Healing, cites scientific studies suggesting that indoor workers with 3 to 9 times less solar UV exposure than outdoor workers have higher rates of melanoma. And then he also suggests that poor nutrition, environmental toxins, stress, inadequate sleep, and the use of sunscreen that blocks UVB are important factors to consider. Some evidence suggests that the use of coconut oil, both as food and as lotion, is the main reason why people living in the Pacific Islands do not normally experience skin cancer despite high sun exposure. Very interesting. And then the last thing, it is important to realize that vitamin D plays a critical role in the development of children and youth, yet there is a lack of awareness of the need for regular sun exposure for our health and well-being. Yeah, the sun has kind of been demonized in the last 10, maybe plus years because of skin cancer and just all these ideas. And so I think people have developed fears around sun exposure now, which, like we know, everything in moderation, right? Everything is balance. And so, yes, possibly there's probably a lot of correlations between people and the sun, but and receiving some kind of skin cancer or whatnot, but I'm sure that there are other factors and variables involved in that, and it might just be maybe they went too far on the spectrum and they need less. What would you say to that?
Yes, I agree. I mean, everything in moderation is very important,
Yes.
and that's where the awareness come in. When to draw the line, that's really important. Look,
Right.
I lived in Australia for many years, in Queensland, which is
Really?
yeah.
No way. That's wonderful.
I was there for 7, 8 years in Brisbane, and in Queensland, it's supposed to be the sunshine state where you get sunshine 365 days a year. Beautiful sunshine and warm. And what I noticed there that many of my friends, I mean, I was quite young those days. I was in my 20s. I used to go. We actually there, the culture is to go to the beach, almost Gold Coast or Sunshine Coast. You go there for barbecue every weekend. Saturday, Sunday. So we used to go to the beach quite often, and there, what I noticed that people who have been very exposed to sunshine whole day, yes, they do put some protection, but people who are more exposed to sunshine, they never had all these melanoma and all these skin cancer issues.
Hmm.
Whereas people who spend more time indoors, all the time trying to protect themselves from the sun, they're the ones who got impacted. And that's what Dr. Mercola's chapter talks about that, which kind of intrigued me because I saw that with my, and and just close by in those islands, close by to Australia, all these Pacific islands, like Tonga and Fiji and all those islands there, Samoa. Those people have no skin cancer at all, and they spend almost the whole day outdoors. You know,
Oh.
almost the whole day outdoors.
Hmm.
So it makes me think that obviously there are much more factors, not just the sunshine.
Right.
And I even in Arizona, I was actually spent a lot of time in Arizona with Dr. Cousins, a Tree of Life. I spent some time there, and I noticed that all of them actually had Caucasian white skin, but they never had, and they'll be spending the whole day exposed to the sunshine, because they actually believed in having full sunshine on your front and your back, complete,
Wow.
with no clothes on, so
Really?
yeah, I think that's a very important, very actually this should be taken very seriously. Whenever there is
Mm.
sunshine, try to get full exposure of the sun if you can, if you can manage to have in a private space,
Mhm.
front at the back. That has got tremendous impact. All depression, stress, all these things will likely go away. And I've seen those people, they've got bright, beautiful eyes, and they're in the sun whole day and they don't put sunscreen and stuff like that, but they eat good food. They eat nutritious food. So it makes me think that I think you're right that we have got a little bit more hype about avoiding sunlight and sunshine completely.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And have you done any research or learned anything about tanning beds? Because okay, I bring this up because I know exactly what you're talking about in terms of you feel good. You're not as depressed. Like everyone knows in the summertime, everyone feels better. It's not something that's uncommon. People love the summer because you feel good in the summer, right? And why is that? Well, it's because it's warm and you can go outside and you can be in the sun. So when my mom and I, like when I was younger, when I was like in high school slash university, every so often in the wintertime, we would go to a tanning bed and we would feel so good afterwards. We would feel so good and so much happier. And mind you, I stopped going because I started getting like a sunspot on me. And
Mhm.
that made me feel like, oh no, my skin, I'm getting sunspots. No, my beautiful porcelain skin. And so I stopped going, but every so often when we would go, we would feel so good. So I'm just curious as to, have you learned anything about that? Is there any research that, I mean, it would make sense, right? Because it's the UVB rays,
Yes, UVB.
correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh,
So, for us to be really healthy, we need to have the full spectrum of
yeah.
sunlight, all the
Yeah.
way, from violet all the way to red, infrared. So you need the full spectrum really for the body to make vitamin D, for example.
Hmm.
And what really surprises me is that we have so many countries in the world, including tropical countries, that got vitamin D deficiency. And this
Hmm.
is a big, big issue in most countries,
Hmm.
which is bit of a surprise. I was in Saudi Arabia, actually, one of the, and there I was shocked to see a lot of women actually had very low vitamin D because they never go
Hmm.
out. They never go out, and they're wearing, all kinds
Yes.
of clothes to cover their face.
Closing.
And
Mm.
so really surprised me that we pay very little attention to one of the main essential, actually, sunlight. Such
Mm.
an important aspect of our life, yet we completely sidetracked it, only to really have all kinds of sufferings, and this
Mm.
is just not acceptable.
Mm.
And I think overexposure I can understand. Yes, if you have overexposure, it can result in all kinds of stuff. It can definitely burn your skin, and wrinkles and all kinds of things can happen
Mm.
if you are overexposed. But if you have a balanced exposure, in fact, early in the morning, sunlight early in the morning is red, right? The sun is red in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, you're getting infrared light, which is actually very healthy. So
Mm.
if you follow the cycle of the sun, then you don't have to worry, because once you get the infrared light in the morning, it prepares you to get the midday sun. So once you have the infrared light,
Really?
yeah, and then you can actually go to the midday sun, no problems. And then in the evening again you get the infrared light, and then whatever the body has seen, uh, full spectrum, it tends to mitigate or so what I've seen, that people who have this habit, or they have this ritual of welcoming the sun in the morning and then get the infrared light,
Mm.
and then during the day they do what they need to do, and then in the evening when the sun is setting, they go there and get the sun exposure. Essentially they're welcoming the sun and saying goodbye to the sun, and and during the day they're working very hard. Those people are extremely healthy, no issues, nothing at all. So I feel that the full spectrum of sunlight is absolutely critical.
That's super interesting. So, two questions. First one, what time of day is the infrared sunlight? Is that like, are we talking like 6 a.m.
Whenever the sunrise, for example,
when
in
it
Toronto,
rises?
sun rises at 7:40 today, 7:39, something like that,
Okay.
a.m.
Okay. And how long does it last usually? Do you know?
For an hour at the most, for an hour. 2 hours are even better, but don't go beyond 2 hours.
Okay.
I mean, I should not say don't go. It's just that one hour is enough if you
Mm.
can have good exposure of sun in the morning, and then do have exposure during the middle day, but not for a long period of time. And then in the evening you can have more, little bit more exposure as well. So
So, okay, so when we're talking like during the winter months that we're
yeah,
in,
yeah.
so do you like go outside and meditate? Like what do you do for that hour for the exposure? Or are you just going for a walk, or yeah, what is around the exposure? And how like
Ex-
yeah.
Yeah, I think in my case, I actually go out no matter. In Toronto, most of the time, you don't even see the sun, but doesn't
Yeah.
matter. Sun is hiding there, and still, yes, you may not get the full exposure, because of the clouds.
Yeah.
But idea is just go for a walk in the nature. That's the best thing.
I see.
And if possible, you can have exposure. I mean, obviously in winter it's not possible sometimes, but
Mm.
at least exposure on your face, directly on your face and your forearms. Very, very important. Where
Really?
yes, and obviously, full exposure is always good, but that's not possible for most people. But
Hmm.
at least forearms, face is okay for the time being because winter is, it's not easy. But walk in the nature,
Okay.
or sit down. In fact, what I'd do, I'd actually walk and possibly sit down, maybe do some deep breathing, sit down and do some deep breathing while looking at the sun, not directly,
Mm.
indirectly. And So that way you can have direct exposure while you're doing your deep breathing. And if you do some yoga asanas, you can do some yogas too, or stretching or whatever you feel like. Just walking is good. Even biking, even biking is fine.
I wish I had a bike. That's awesome. Okay, I think I might try that. I mean, mind you, have you seen the weather today? We have a slight hurricane happening in Toronto today. This is crazy.
Yeah.
Okay, that's very interesting. And my second question in regards to this is the infrared light, is that in association with the infrared saunas? Is that sort of the same thing?
Yes. So essentially, the concept comes from there.
Okay.
So essentially, we need to have more exposure to infrared. That's actually quite a healthy spectrum, whereas
Mm.
violet, ultraviolet, violet, which is the other part, like starts from V, violet, indigo, blue, green, red, yellow, and red. And red is obviously the most, is healthy spectrum, infrared, red,
Mm.
whereas violet is most extreme, so it's good to have the full spectrum, but infrared definitely has some healing properties as well. It can go deeper and doesn't really hurt like ultraviolet radiations do, and that's why infrared saunas have become so popular. It gives you a healthy spectrum, not spectrum, but definitely gives you the healthy exposure to the red light, infrared light, which is also healthy. It goes deep inside and also helps in detoxification.
Cool. Okay, this is very interesting. You didn't talk about this in your book, so we're getting extra knowledge from you here. I love it. Okay, cool. I think I'm going to try to challenge myself to do that. I mean, I've been wanting to push myself to go running again because I live near the water now and it's really nice in the mornings, but it's
Mm,
so cold and it's really hard to get me,
right.
out of bed because I'm just frozen. So, but I'm going to try to do that because I could see why that would be necessary. And I mean, I believe with I believe in the idea of waking up with the sun. I think that there's something to it in the fact that I don't know, we just used to be farmers and we would wake up and we were up early with the sun and with
Yeah.
the, chickens and whatever. I don't know what I'm saying right now. But we would wake up earlier and I think we would go to bed when it's dark out and I think it's quite possible that a lot of depression and us just feeling how we feel now has to do with our sort of regular, I don't know if it's not biological clock, but like our internal
Yeah.
is it circadian rhythm? Is that what it's called?
Yes,
Yeah.
circadian rhythm.
Yeah,
Yes,
our
you're right.
circadian rhythm is kind of is off now, right? And
Yes.
and so I think I could see why that would work and yeah, and why we would feel so much better if we tried that. So I'm definitely going, oh, you're gonna have to hold me to it, but I'm gonna try. I'm gonna try to wake up early with the sun and see and just
It
kind of
is.
journal my progress.
It is actually. It's actually very good. To be able to sync with the sun's energy and the moon's energy is very nice.
Yeah.
For example, a lot of people go in the morning, welcome the sun. I think it's a beautiful thing. It also helps you to wake up early and
Yeah.
start doing your things, and also helps you in your career, education, whatever. And then go out in the evenings, after work, and see the sunset, if possible. And then same applies to moon as well, because a lot of people don't even know when it's full moon and half moon, and new moon. And it's a very beautiful part, of our life, to be able to sync with the sun and the moon. And moon is,
Absolutely.
I feel that men are more, I think men needs to sync with sun more often, and women needs to sync more with the moon.
Hmm.
Even though this is not always true, but this is what I found, that a lot of women I know in my personal life, in my family as well. They know exactly when is full moon because of their cycles and whatever. So it's very interesting that they can sync with the moon. In fact, we are born because our mothers were in sync with the moon.
Hmm.
So it's very interesting, very beautiful, actually. But other thing is also the planets too. Do you know that on December 21st there's going to be a very important event? Um,
No, I didn't know this. Well, what is
yeah.
it?
So uh, the two largest planets, Jupiter and Saturn, are going to be aligned, going to be in conjunction with each other, and this is going to be massive, massive. This is happening after 800 years,
Oh,
and that is definitely creating some kind of an energy. So 21st of December, it's a very important date. It's a solar eclipse, especially in
okay.
South America, and also we can see from here too. So 21st of December, if you have an opportunity looking at your southern west sky, you can actually see. If you have a binoculars or some kind of a small telescope,
Yeah.
look at them. It'll be a very beautiful event. And on a solar eclipse, I do not recommend you going out in the sun. Stay in your
Oh.
basement as much as possible you can, but after sunset you go out and see the conjunction of Saturn and Jupiter. That's a beautiful thing, so just do it, you know
So cool. I don't know much about solar eclipses and why is it we shouldn't be going out into the sun? Is it because the rays are more powerful? Like,
Uh,
what is it about that people tend to warn you from staying out of the sun when it's happening?
well, it's called sun flare,
Yeah.
and it can be pretty. People have everybody has different effects. Some people have. I've seen people have very nasty effects.
Hmm.
They're having all kinds of health problems, because they have been really brave, go out in the sun eclipse and, wandering around and looking at the sun, and then after that, they don't feel good for a year or two, and the health is not the same again.
Interesting.
So just to be careful, and I feel that why, yeah, every day, 300, you just go every single day outside, but on an eclipse, I think try to be in your basement as much as possible,
But
So
what if I live in a condo and it's so sunny in here? There's there's windows everywhere. Then what? No
it's
basement.
okay. I mean, don't go outside and expose yourself. In fact,
Yeah.
it's okay in Toronto now because it's cooler temperatures, so it
Right.
won't be much. But if you're in southern hemisphere, for example, so
Mm.
because it's summer there, right? And there, if you just go around, it's not going to be good for you. I think at least for the eclipse, have some respect because there are some things happening, and it's good to avoid the sunlight, especially on December 21st, if possible.
Okay, cool. So interesting. I want to bring us to the part of your chapter when you talk about energy healing, because obviously that is just kind of something that I'm personally very obsessed with. So I highlighted another few things that I'd love to read. So every living being in the universe has a form, and that form has associated energy vibrating at different frequencies. And then you said, according to biologist Rupert Sheldrake, our brain is within the confines of our cranium, but our mind is extended into space and stretches out into the world around us. This means we can connect to people, things, and places that are physically far away from us. And in fact, we can affect them if we know how to control the cosmic energy. I found that to be very, very interesting. And just had me reflecting on, let's say, social media, for example, right? And how one thing can happen, like the death of that basketball player in January. Everyone around the world, whether they were into basketball or not, was feeling super down about that incident. We were all feeling it on a very like deep level. I have no Kobe Bryant was it? I think was it Bryant? Yeah, Kobe Bryant. Do you remember when that happened in January?
Yes, that was this year. Yes.
Yes. So yes, when Kobe Bryant and his daughter passed because they're helicopter, I guess, blew up or there was some failure. Anyways, I'm not even a basketball fan. I've seen his face before, but didn't really, know anything about him until that incident. But I was so torn up about it. I felt sick, just feeling and thinking about it. And it really had me just kind of thinking about the power of how we're all so connected and how I can feel something to do with an incident that's so far away in another country. It has nothing to do with me and I don't even know this person, and how everyone around the world was feeling it. And so um in this particular quote, when Rupert says we can affect them if we know how to control the cosmic energy, do you think that maybe that's kind of what social media maybe does a little bit?
See, I think Rupert is very interesting. I've been listening to him for a long time, actually.
Mm-hmm.
He's a biologist, actually. He's a biologist and he has been doing a lot of
Oh.
research on various fields. And what he's saying is very interesting. In fact, it echoes definitely with my thinking as well,
Hmm.
that our brains are physically located in our system. So brains are very limited,
Mm-hmm.
whereas our mind is connected with everything. Our mind pervades. Mind actually connects with everything.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, if you look at, there's a common consciousness across the globe. This consciousness pervades every mind. Essentially, me and you and everybody else are connected through this mind. So
Mm-hmm.
that's why when something touches the mind, not the brain, something, brain is very limited, are limited to thoughts and emotions, which are very personal and local. Whereas mind, that consciousness is pervasive, is everywhere. So anything that touches the mind, it touches everybody, every human being in the planet, not just human being, even animals and birds.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, you may not believe this or not, but I know in India, people keep cows in the house. In villages, they have cows. They actually treat cow as their mother, because they drink the milk, right? If you drink the
Yes.
milk, their mother.
Ah,
Yeah.
interesting.
So the cows are mother because every child drinks milk. It's beautiful. Now, whenever there's a death in the family, believe me or not, cows, you can see tears in them. Cows can feel that something is wrong in the family. Something has happened, so you can feel the emotions that come from the cow. Cows are very emotional creatures. They're very lot of full of emotions, and they're so attached to every person in the family that that's a small example that the consciousness pervades every mind, including animals and birds. So
Hmm.
what you're saying is absolutely right, and that's what Rupert has been saying, that there's a collective consciousness.
Hmm.
For example, if humanity learns something, or any species learns about something, about a skill or a knowledge or something, that actually, if it's in the mind, if it touches the mind, it actually goes to everybody, every mind. So you can tap into that. For
Hmm.
example, it could be 5,000 kilometers away, but if you bring in something new into the consciousness, and that has gone into the mind, so that will, that consciousness or that knowledge or know-how will be emanating from every mind. So you can capture that know-how. So that's what Rupert Sheldrake has been doing. This, he studied with animals and he found that to be true, that for example, in one generation, whatever the animals learn, and automatically it passes on to the next generation. Same thing happens to humans too. A lot of things we don't learn. For example, I've seen actually my daughter, when she was born, the first thing she did, you know what? She went to, start drinking milk
Mm-hmm.
immediately, within 5 minutes of born. So what I'm saying is that, how do they know? How does she know that what to drink, what to eat?
Sure.
And that was like shocking. Within 5 minutes, once she was born, the only thing, so that's the thing about humanity, that there is a mind around us, and this mind has got so much of consciousness, and that probably, I think it brings in all the consciousness that we can ever imagine. So it
Hmm.
pervades every mind, I guess. So I think that's what you're talking about, and that's what Rupert is talking about.
Yeah, it's very interesting. And it also just kind of makes you think about how many different people have the same idea and, one person just acts on it. But you can have the same idea as someone else. I think where you get that from is probably the collective consciousness. We all are just pulling from it. And then one person actually decides to act on it,
Yeah.
you know? So interesting. I love talking about this stuff. And I don't know. I guess there's something inside of me that just wants to understand all the secrets of the world. That's just how I am. And so when I read this and he says we can this means we can connect to people, things, and places that are physically far away from us, and in fact we can affect them if we know how to control the cosmic energy. Just find that to be so interesting, and I think I'm going to chew on that for quite some time, because I don't know. It makes you feel like, wow, we are all very powerful. Like we could affect someone across the world, which is what's so great about what we're doing right now. We are creating something and we can be affecting someone from Turkey, from Germany. I have a fan that's in Germany that watches my content, so it's so cool. Another part of the book that I found very interesting, or this section, Anne Zurich, I'm not sure if I pronounced that right. She teaches how to design a sacred healing sanctuary. I think that's really interesting, using a combination of sound, smell, color, and crystals to boost your energy, your memory, your sex drive, your immunity against illness, and your fitness, stamina, and as well as reduce stress. Did you end up doing something like that? Have you created sort of a sacred healing sanctuary for yourself?
Yes. So I think I was quite impressed with Anne's book, and I read the book long time ago, many years ago, and she's absolutely right that sometimes I feel that the collective consciousness that we have in the mind, what stops us from actually not actually getting the full benefit of the mind is our brain,
Hmm.
because our brain is so limited through our thoughts and emotions that it goes into the cycle and cycle. It doesn't let us get out into the actual intelligence, which
Right.
is very interesting. And I have studied that for a long period of time, and I'm still studying. I find that if we can stop the chattering of the mind, so to say, in a very loose terms, chattering of the mind, it helps you to connect with the consciousness, deep consciousness and the mind. So your mind is much more tapping into things that actually matters.
Right.
So that's why I feel that the seven essentials have a very important role to play. It helps us to make the brain stop its limited actions, even though the brain is very important, no doubt, very important for our
Sure.
safety, for learning skills. Brain has a very important role to play, but we use brain for everything, which is wrong. I
Hmm.
think there is a mind there which is much more, powerful and intelligent than the limited brain is. But somehow we are sucked into thinking that brain is everything, which is not. And this is interesting.
So interesting. I love that you just said that, because I am such a big believer in the body also has its own brain in a different way. The
Yes.
body can sense things, the body expresses how we're feeling without us even knowing it sometimes. And then our brain catches up with it and goes, "Oh, okay." And that's something that I think about a lot, to be honest. I think we put a lot of emphasis on the power of the brain, whereas there's so much that we don't know that we don't know. There's a
Yes.
consciousness, whether it's, you could call it your third eye, or what we were just talking about, the overall consciousness that we can tap into, that the brain doesn't necessarily understand. It can't make logic of it, really. And I think maybe I'm not sure your experience, but for me, I think the reason why I can grasp that, I can understand that the brain isn't the be all end all, is because I've had contact with spirit, because I've had, psychic predictions, and I've told people about ancestors and whatnot, and messages, that I think that is just so out of this world, literally, and bizarre, and just so strange, that if you don't have that experience, I could see how that might be harder for you to understand or grasp this concept. And I think it's because
Yeah.
I've just had such crazy experiences in that way that are totally unexplainable. The brain can't even fathom where the heck this information is coming from. That's why I'm able to be a little bit more open to to this concept for sure.
Yes, I think mystery and mystical experiences, I think it does happen.
Yes.
There's a mystery in this world. I think science has only scratched the surface. As a scientist, I'll tell you this: we have only scratched the surface, and mystical things do happen. And you are telling me exactly the same.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, honestly, I think that there's so much to touch on in this chapter. There's been so much that we've talked about. I think that for everyone listening, if you've enjoyed this stream, I think you need to go and read Barun's book and really take in the full chapter because it's unreal. And mind you, we did touch on pretty much everything, but yeah, I think at this point we should wrap it up because it's been so great and I want to finish on this awesome note. So if you did like any of the ideas and concepts in this video, then for sure Bruin's book is the 7 essentials to transform your life, and we will continue to do chapter by chapter little video sessions for the next few weeks. I mean, I'm sure we'll stop during the holidays. We haven't really talked about that, Barun, but I don't know what your thoughts were on that. I'm assuming that I'm sure you're going to be with your family and whatnot. So we'll probably do another one next week, and then
Yes.
we'll maybe stop for the holidays and continue on in New Year. But man, another really fun session. I really enjoyed this. So do you have any final thoughts that you want to wrap up in regards to the cosmic energy ideas and this chapter as a whole?
Yes, the only thing I can say about cosmic energy is try to get as much sun exposure as possible within the limits and within your limits. That's very important. And the
Mm-hmm.
next thing is to make sure that the Earth's energy, try to get as much grounding as possible. Try to be close to the ground.
Mm-hmm.
These two things by itself, by themselves are quite 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 important, for
Mm-hmm.
us to. And I always say, just be conscious and be aware of what's going around you, and you'll be automatically drawn to all these because these things do matter. Sunlight do matter, earth's energy do matter, breathing do matter.
Yeah.
So just be aware, and that's the way to go, I guess.
Yeah, and just to add to that, I would say if there's anyone that is fearful of sun due to, just things that you've read about skin cancer or whatnot, what I would say to that, and I'm sure you'd probably agree, Brune, is to listen to, your inner guidance. And if you've been in the sun for a couple hours one day, then maybe if your inner self or higher mind or whatnot is telling you that you should go inside now, listen to that. So it's really about finding the balance of what feels right for you and listening to your gut instincts. Would you agree?
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. I think so. I think just to be aware, and I think you have to draw your own lines. You cannot
Yeah.
go to extremes. Just don't go to
Yes.
extremes. You don't have to spend 5 hours in the sunlight. In the middle of. I think even half an hour, 20 minutes. Sometimes good enough. So
Mhm.
draw your own lines. So
I love it. Wonderful. Okay, so the next chapter, chapter 4, I am literally just flipping through the book. Barun, do you know offhand what this chapter is
yes,
called?
it's mindful eating.
Aha.
Mindful eating, and we'll talk about. There's so much talk about eating, but still, everybody is confused. So
Yes.
I have put together 3 simple principles, which we'll talk about in there, and that should help us guide, towards the best way for mindful eating.
Yeah, and I would say also to just help us kind of go through all of the misinformed data as well. It's this chapter is more about being mindful and what I really like about your book is that you do provide um just not just evidence, but you provide studies and you say studies show, but you don't say I conclude that it's this way and this is the only way. You kind of present the evidence and you allow the reader to make their own conclusions. And I think that's what's really important. And so there's just a lot of mixed
Yeah.
messages out in the world in regards to food. So I'm excited for us to talk about this next chapter next week because it'll kind of help anyone that feels a little bit fearful or nervous about all the different studies out there. It'll kind of help you come to a place of feeling calm about the choices that you make. And yeah, just knowing how to be mindful, I think will truly help you in feeling good about everything that you choose to eat in the future. So,
Absolutely. That sounds
yeah.
good.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much for watching, everyone. I hope you enjoyed this, I guess not live stream, but this video series, part 3 in our series. And we will be back again next week. And Barun, I was going to tell you, because we kind of switched from live stream to this, what I was thinking is maybe we could shoot the next episode in advance so that we can have each episode at least be posted at 3 p.m. on Fridays. So
Yes.
yeah, if you would like to do that, then we can go ahead and maybe shoot like on Wednesday or Tuesday, and then I can post it on Fridays at 3 p.m. What do you think
Yes.
about
I
that?
think
Yeah?
that sounds good. That sounds very good. Yep.
Great. So then for everyone watching, the next episode will be live at 3 p.m. next Friday. So I hope that you will check it out. Sending you all so much love, light, and sunshine vibes, which goes along with this stream. All right. Take care, guys. Mwah.
Okay.
Bye.
See you. Bye.